go at trying to explain how I do shadows. So please forgive me if I stutter and get confused, because it's been a while since I've made one of these videos. So basically, what I'm going to try and do is create a shadow on something that's more complicated. Obviously, we know how easy it is to do the simple square object, but this when we got complex bit in it. So the first thing I'm going to do to work is to create a background that's the same grey as the one we want to end up with, just so we can see the effect easier. So we're going to do a solid colour, and we're going to do it maybe slightly darker, just to help us. 250. See what's going on. Place that behind the background. So we now, again, we want to keep the separate layers and save it as a WebP. We can save it as a PSD as well, and then save it back to a WebP, so we can resize it for whichever size we want. So we're going to take the layer and we're going to make a copy of the layer, Command J. Then we're going to make, with hue and saturation, we're going to desaturate it and darken it. So we've basically got a black shadow that we can reposition. Now, the first thing I prefer to do is to make it slightly opaque, transparent, so I can see the subject behind it, so we can make that, we can see how the shadow is going to behave. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is enlarge the canvas, making it all 2000 pixels all around, which is the largest internet file we're going to do. For print, I would go to a lot more trouble, so that I wouldn't do the print one for these. I would just do the web version. And then when you want to make a print, spend more time and get the print version to a higher standard, because people can see more on a print. Okay, so we just made it a little bit bigger so we can help us work with it. We're going to make sure that it burns off to the edge anyway, but in how we pay it. So take this and we want to distort it. So edit, transform, distort, and then we're going to lay it down. In the way that I'm trying to turn off my phone so it doesn't annoy us with all the text. We're going to lay it down flat. Now you can see it's obviously not where we want it to be. So I want to pull it kind of into the place that you think it should be. I'm going to move that over a bit because we want those shadows on the right. Now what we're going to do is keep that. Now we're going to, again, Command T to edit, but we're going to do this little device up here, which gives us a gridded distortion. So if we press that one, and then we choose 4x4 or 5x5. 4x4 or 3x3 is probably going to be easier when you've got a really detailed subject. Sometimes you need to go there, but let's try 3x3. Now you see it's all the grids. So what we can do is we can pull, because we know the shadow would go behind here, so we can pull this shadow down there, which is going to affect this one. So you're going to have to keep pulling and moving. Sometimes you can't, so you have to save it and do it again. Again, I'm going to bring this down a little bit here. Now this wouldn't be a shadow here, so this would finish at there. So we want to bring that up there. You can see it all. You've got to keep pulling in different directions. We're going to have to do some editing as well. We're going to pull that down there. So this isn't going to give us enough movement. Usually it is, to be fair. On most of the ones I do, this is it, but it's just because of how big the teddy bear is. Now see where I want that shadow. Got to think that's going to creep under a little bit, but very subtle. So we're going to paint that out. So we are going to do a bit more distortion here than we wanted to. So press enter. Now we can to do this more, we're going to go to liquify. And then in Liquify, you've got a little thing that shows backdrop. So again, it's the same thing as what we were doing before. So now we're going to use a biggish brush, and we're going to use the top finger. So the top finger on a biggish brush. And then what we're going to do is move all of the shadows to where we think sometimes you've got to make them smaller and then bigger. Okay, this is off the background, but we remember we're going to do that when we're creating our softness. Okay, so now everything leads away from the shadow. So this is now a reasonably convincing, completely sharp shadow. So I'm just going to put it behind the subject for a second. So you can see that. Now remember, we've got to get rid of our edge, our pixel edge, depending, but we always do it depending on the color. So I never get rid of that pixel until the last minute. And the way we do that is to select, so Command and select the picture itself, which gives us a selection. Then we're going to get what we're going to go selection, modify, contract by 1 pixel. Then we're going to make a mask and have a look at that mask and see if we need to feather it in any way. You can see we've got a little bit left over, so we're going to double click on that and it will give us the feathering. So we can just now I'm going to show you the other complicated one which really helps us get exactly. So if we go filter, so we're selecting the mask. If we do filter, I showed you this last time, Gaussian blur, 1 pixel. Now with a curve, we're going to darken as much as necessary to completely remove that edge. And then we're just literally removing the edge until it's perfect. So now we've got our shadow, which is now we've got to soften it, but we want to soften it progressively because obviously the closer it is to the subject, the closer the shadow is to the thing that creates the shadow, the sharper it's going to be. But it would never be that sharp depending on the light source, but we're going by a relatively soft light source to make it look more pleasing. So we want it sharper here and blurring the farther it gets. So it's a progressive blurring. This is how we make it look like a convincing shadow. So what we've got to do is make some selections of each one. So we're going to make a selection of that around that subject. So when we feather it from this point, it gets progressively feathered. So we're going to make that a little bit bigger, like that. Then we do select, modify, feather, and we're going to go for 75 pixels between there and there. And then we're going to blur it. But you can see it's going to affect this one in a way we didn't want to affect it. So we take this and we literally from here, we minus that from our selection. So now we've got, this should be a progression. We're going to see how that works. We can get rid of that as well. We don't need any of that. We've got to be careful not to remove the actual picture. So here we're going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And now let's keep creeping up and see how it's affected. Now you can see it's affected this area too much. So we're going to go back down. And you can keep doing that with a greater and greater. So here we're going to do this one like that. Go a little bigger. Now try select, modify, feather 100. You've got to play and try different things. Filter, Gaussian blur. deselect and use the blur tool as well to really extend it. You could also try that just painting it in, making sure it's on 100%. To be fair, this is how I do it most of the time, but in the beginning it gives you a good idea to do it with Gaussian blur. I'm also going to actually, when I'm painting the density, which is the next stage. So the next stage, you can spend a bit of time getting that right. Again, here we want those to be soft. Right, so the next stage is we want the shadow to be nearly black, but not absolute black at the very edge. So we're going to choose our darkest point. So I don't know, that's probably about right. Now we're going to create a mask. %, so really soft, and it's going to be black on the mask, and we're just literally going to paint away. You're using a mouse, so you might want to use a bit stronger, and then click it away until it like this. That's how I'll use a mouse, I think. I'm used to using this, but so we want to progressive allow the more hidden it is to be the more that didn't look convincing. Remember, because this is a mask, we can do that, and then we can go back to white and paint it back into where we think it should be darker, right to the point we can. And with the outside here, we want it really not to go off the edge of the picture, so we're going to be more aggressive with the painting, and to the point we're actually going to take it to 100%. In fact, I'll probably have it like that. And then I'm going to take this up to 100% because I want it to absolutely not go off the edge of the picture. So we're going to take it so that's the bits we want. And over on here, I think that should be very subtle. Again, you can see that I've gone too far on certain areas that I want that to do, so make it smaller. Go back to white, and then we can get where we think we need to make it. And that's basically how I do a shadow. And then we can, again, just keep on doing this. You can actually take out some of the shadow with the 100%, if you feel that that line is too strong. Remember, with multiple lights like this, you can be quite aggressive, taking it away and then keep adding it back until you've got an instinct of what you think looks convincing. I hope that helps. Give me a ring if you need me to work on a specific part or I haven't explained it well enough. Happy to do this a few times if that helps. Thanks.